The arrow whistled past Godric's ear, so close he felt the feathers brush his skin. He dove behind the oak tree, his leather vest already torn in 3 places, blood seeping through the gaps. This was the 3rd ambush in 2 weeks. The bandits were getting bolder, their weapons sharper, and Godric's luck was running out. But as he pressed his back against the rough bark, catching his breath, an idea sparked in his mind, an idea that would change warfare forever. The year was 1066, and Godric was no ordinary soldier. He was a blacksmith's son from the village of Hastings, conscripted into Duke William's army for the invasion of England. Unlike the nobles who rode on horseback with their fine mail shirts, common soldiers like Godric made do with whatever protection they could afford, leather jerkins, perhaps a metal cap if they were lucky, and prayers to God for the rest. That night, as Godric sat by the campfire cleaning his wounds, he couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen on the battlefield. The Norman knights wore chainmail thousands of tiny iron rings linked together, but even that wasn't enough. He'd watched arrows pierce through the gaps, seen swords find their way between the links. Men died screaming, clutching wounds that shouldn't have been possible if their armour had truly protected them. "There has to be a better way," Godric muttered to himself. His friend Thomas, sharpening his sword nearby, looked up. Better way for what? Protection. Real protection. Not this. Godric tugged at his leather vest. Not even the chainmail the lords wear. Something that actually stops blades and arrows, Thomas laughed. You planning to wrap yourself in a church bell? That's about the only metal thick enough to stop a warhammer. But Thomas's joke planted a seed. What if? What if you could shape metal plates to fit a man's body? Not just a breastplate, but protection for every vulnerable spot, arms, legs, joints. Like the scales of a dragon, overlapping and complete. The problem was simple. Solid metal plates would be too heavy to move in. A man would be trapped in his own protection, immobile and useless. But what if the plates were jointed? What if they moved with the body like the segments of an insect's shell? Godric became obsessed. Between battles and guard duties he sketched designs in the dirt, studied the way his own body moved, examined every piece of armour he could find. The other soldiers thought he'd gone mad, but Godric didn't care. He was solving a puzzle that had plagued warriors since the dawn of warfare. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a crab. One evening, while foraging for food along the coast, Godric found a large crab scuttling across the rocks. He watched it, mesmerized by how its shell moved hard plates protecting soft flesh, yet flexible enough for the creature to walk, climb, even fight. He caught the crab and studied it for hours, turning it over in his hands, watching how each segment connected to the next. That night Godric began his first real design. He borrowed parchment and ink from the army's scribe, earning strange looks and a week's worth of his bread ration. But it was worth it. He drew a human figure, then began adding plates. A breastplate for the chest, backplate for the spine, pauldrons for the shoulders. But the genius was in the joints, the elbows, knees, neck, where he designed overlapping plates that could slide over each other, allowing movement while maintaining protection. The sketches were one thing. Building it was another entirely. Godric needed help, and he needed a master craftsman. He requested leave to visit his father's old colleague, Master Aldric, a blacksmith in the town of Rouen, who owed Godric's family a debt. The request was denied twice, but Godric was persistent. Finally, after saving a captain's life during a skirmish, he was granted 3 days' leave. Master Aldric's forge was a cavern of heat and noise, the air thick with smoke and the ring of hammers on anvils. The old blacksmith, his beard singed and his arms like tree trunks, looked at Godric's designs with sceptical eyes. "Impossible," Aldric declared. "The weight alone would crush a man, and the joints. How do you propose to make steel bend without breaking?" "Not bend," Godric explained, his voice urgent. "Pivot, like a door on hinges. Small plates connected by rivets, allowing rotation, and the weight we distribute it across the whole body. not concentrated in one place like chainmail. Aldrich studied the drawings again, his frown deepening. Then, slowly, his expression changed. His eyes widened. By God's bones, boy, this might actually work. They worked through the night and the next day. Aldrich had never undertaken such a project, but he was intrigued. They started with a single arm piece, a vambrace for the forearm. Aldrich heated and hammered the steel, shaping it to Godric's measurements. They experimented with different thicknesses, finding the balance between protection and weight. The joint at the elbow was the hardest part, requiring multiple attempts before they created overlapping plates that moved smoothly. When Godric flexed his arm wearing the finished vambrace, tears came to his eyes. It worked. The steel moved with him, protected him, and while heavy, was manageable. "We need more time," Aldrich said. "To make a full suit, that's months of work." "I don't have months," Godric replied. "I have one more day." They made a decision. They would create the most critical pieces, a breastplate, backplate, and helmet. The rest would have to wait for another time. Aldrich called in his 2 apprentices, and the forge became a whirlwind of activity. They worked without sleep, taking turns at the anvil, shaping metal, testing fits, adjusting designs. Godric's insight into body mechanics proved invaluable. He showed them how to curve the breastplate to deflect blows rather than absorb them directly, how to add a ridge down the centre for extra strength without extra weight. The helmet was designed with a visor that could flip up, protecting the face in battle while allowing vision and breath during calmer moments. When Godric donned the 3 pieces on the morning of his 3rd day, he felt transformed. The breastplate fit snugly, distributing its weight across his shoulders and hips. The backplate protected his spine and kidneys. The helmet, though heavy, felt secure and offered protection he'd never known. "You look like a walking fortress," one of the apprentices whispered in awe. Godric returned to the army camp wearing his creation under a cloak. He said nothing to anyone, waiting for the right moment to reveal what he'd made. That moment came sooner than expected. 2 days later, Duke William's forces engaged a Saxon resistance group in a brutal forest battle. Godric's unit was caught in the thick of it, surrounded by enemy fighters wielding axes and swords. This was the test. Godric threw off his cloak and charged into battle. The first Saxon who struck him, a massive man with a battle-axe aimed for Godric's chest, with a blow that would have cleaved him in 2. The axe connected with the breastplate and deflected upward, the curved surface doing exactly what Godric had designed it to do. The Saxon's eyes went wide with shock. Godric didn't hesitate. He pressed forward, his sword finding gaps in his opponent's defence. Another enemy came from the side, sword aimed at Godric's ribs. Again, the blade struck steel and glanced away. Arrow after arrow bounced off the breastplate, the helmet, leaving only dents where there should have been fatal wounds. The other soldiers watched in amazement as Godric fought like a demon, seemingly invincible. The Saxons began to retreat, unnerved by this warrior they couldn't kill. When the battle ended, Godric stood among the fallen, battered but alive, his armour dented but intact. His captain approached, staring at the metal suit. "What sorcery is this?" "Not sorcery," Godric replied, removing his helmet. "Engineering." Word spread through the camp like wildfire. By evening, Godric was summoned to Duke William's tent. The Duke himself examined the armour, running his hands over the plates, testing the joints. "Who made this?" William demanded. "I designed it, my lord. Master Aldrich of Rouen helped forge it." William looked at Godric with new eyes. "Can you make more?" "Yes, my lord. Given time and resources, you'll have both. I want 50 suits made before we face Harold's army at Hastings." Godric knew 50 was impossible in the time they had, but he also knew this was his chance. He and Master Aldrich worked with a team of blacksmiths, simplifying the design for mass production while maintaining its core innovations. They created templates, trained other smiths, and established an assembly process. By the time of the Battle of Hastings, they had completed 12 full suits of plate armour. William gave them to his best knights, and those 12 men became the tip of the Norman spear. They charged through Saxon lines like living battering rams, their armour turning aside blows that would have killed ordinary men. The Saxons had never seen anything like it. Their weapons were designed to defeat chainmail and leather, not solid plate. Panic spread through their ranks. When King Harold fell with an arrow to the eye, and the Normans pressed their advantage, these armoured knights were instrumental in breaking the Saxon shield wall. William won the crown of England that day, and Godric won something else: immortality. After the conquest, William appointed Godric as royal armourer, tasking him with equipping England's new Norman nobility with plate armour. Godric refined his designs over the years, adding pieces, improving joints, creating specialised suits for different types of combat. Other armourers studied his work and added their own innovations. Within 2 generations, plate armour became the standard for knights across Europe. The design spread to France, Germany, Spain, and beyond. Armourers competed to create more elaborate, more protective, more beautiful suits. The craft became an art form, with suits costing as much as a small estate. But they all traced their lineage back to that first suit, the one Godric created in Master Aldric's forge, born from desperation, observation, and innovation. Godric lived to see his invention transform warfare. He saw knights become walking fortresses, saw battles won and lost based on the quality of armour. He trained a generation of armourers, passing on not just techniques but a philosophy. Protection should never come at the cost of mobility. In his old age, Godric kept the original breastplate, helmet and backplate in his workshop. Young armourers would come to see them, running their hands over the dented metal, marvelling at the simplicity of the design. The joints were crude compared to later innovations, the fit imperfect, the decoration non-existent. But it worked. It had saved Godric's life and changed history. When Godric died in 1099 at the age of 63, he was buried in a tomb beside a church he'd funded with his earnings. On his grave, they placed his original breastplate dented, scarred, but still intact. The inscription read, "Here lies Godric of Hastings, who armoured men against death and changed the face of war." The plate armour tradition he started would dominate European warfare for 500 years, until gunpowder finally rendered it obsolete. But even then, his influence persisted. Modern soldiers still wear armour-plate ceramic Kevlar steel, because Godric proved a fundamental truth. You can protect the human body with rigid plates and still allow it to fight. The first man who created knight's armour wasn't a noble or a wealthy merchant. He was a common soldier who refused to accept that death in battle was inevitable. He was an observer who learned from crabs and insects. He was an innovator who turned a simple idea into a revolution. Godric's story reminds us that the greatest inventions often come from the most desperate needs, and that one person with a vision can change the world, even if that world is trying to kill them.